The throne hall of Threxus shimmered like the heart of a dying star. Golden light rippled across the marble floor, bending around the massive crystalline columns that sang faintly under the alien air's pressure. Every note echoed through Captain Elias Ward's bones as he stood before the Crimson Monarch. His armored boots felt far too heavy, his pulse too loud in the stillness. He had been briefed for combat, diplomacy, even for death, but not for this. Not for the Queen's molten stare, nor for her words that cracked the air like thunder. "Why does my daughter hold your hand, human?" The Queen's voice held gravity itself. Her skin was the color of burning embers, hair pale as bone, braided like twin strands of lightning around a crown that shimmered with veins of living silver. The sound of her question seemed to weigh on the walls, bending the very air with heat. Elias glanced down at the blue-skinned woman beside him. Princess Selara, the emissary who had risked everything to reach his ship. Her fingers still twined through his gloved hand, delicate yet unyielding. He could feel her pulse, cool and steady, through the layers of polymer fabric. He couldn't let go, not after what they'd survived to reach this hall. The guards shifted at the Queen's sides, armored giants with silver lances humming faintly. Their gazes were not merely hostile. They were disbelieving. A human, touching royal blood? It was a crime in 100 systems. But Selara's hand did not move, and Elias could feel her trembling. Not in fear, but in defiance. Her mother's glare burned hotter. "Explain yourself," the Queen commanded, each syllable crisp as a blade. "Or I will have the air taken from your lungs before the sun sets on this world." Elias had faced alien fleets, pirate raiders, even the suffocating silence of deep space. But this was different. Every instinct screamed at him to drop Selara's hand, to bow or kneel or retreat. Yet something deeper, something stubborn and utterly human, rooted him in place. He met the Queen's eyes. "Because she asked me to," he said quietly. "And I gave my word I wouldn't let go until she was safe." The room inhaled as one, a living organism of shock. For a heartbeat, the Queen seemed carved of living fire, motionless. Then her head tilted, and her voice dropped to something softer, far more dangerous. "Safe," she repeated. "Safe from whom, human? My daughter stands beneath the crown's protection. Unless, of course, it is you she needs protection from." Her words lanced through the air, shimmering with restrained fury. Elias's hand tightened around Selara's. "From your warlords," he said, the words scraping raw from his throat. "From the ones who'd rather see her dead than see peace." Whispers rippled through the hall. The Queen's expression did not shift, but the fire in her eyes flickered. Selara stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "Mother," she said, "the humans are not our enemies. They saved me when your own generals would not." Her voice echoed against the gold-veined pillars. "He saved me." She looked back at Elias, the faintest smile ghosting across her lips, as if daring the galaxy itself to deny the truth between them. The Queen rose from her throne, and every guard in the chamber moved with her, the synchronized clang of armor like the tolling of a bell. She descended the dais with measured grace, the air thick with scent of ozone and heat. Her gaze shifted between her daughter and the human officer. When she finally stopped before Elias, he felt the temperature spike, a living furnace radiating judgment. "You presume much," she murmured, her voice low enough to shiver his bones. "You think yourself savior. Yet you walk among my kind as if your flesh were flame-proof." Elias forced himself not to flinch. "I think myself human," he said, "and that means I don't leave people behind." The Queen's eyes narrowed, ancient and calculating. For the first time, her expression faltered, not in weakness but in recognition. Around them, the murmuring of the court grew louder, alien tongues whispering names and oaths. Something unspoken passed between the two women, mother and daughter. The Queen inhaled, slow and deliberate, before straightening again. "Then you will prove it," she said. The words fell like stones in water, sending ripples through every soldier and servant in the chamber. Elias's hand twitched at his side, but Selara's grip steadied him again. The queen turned to her guards. "Bring the witness orb," she commanded. Her tone brooked no refusal. 2 soldiers bowed and vanished through the side doors, the sound of their armor fading into the distance. The remaining guards tightened their circle. Elias glanced at Selara, but her expression had grown solemn, almost resigned. "What's the witness orb?" he whispered. She met his eyes, her voice barely above breath. "Truth itself," she said. "It sees through lies." Minutes stretched like molten glass. The hall's lights dimmed, and a low hum began to resonate from the floor. Alive, ancient, technological. When the guards returned, they carried a sphere of glass and light the size of a human heart, suspended between magnetic tendrils. It pulsed with inner storms, colors shifting from crimson to violet to gold. Elias's breath caught. He'd seen alien relics before, but nothing like this, nothing that felt aware. The queen gestured, and the orb floated forward, stopping between them. "Speak truth, human," she said. "Tell me why my daughter risked her crown, her life, her people, to stand beside you." The orb pulsed once, then glowed a steady white. Elias swallowed. He wanted to explain everything: the ambush in orbit, the mission gone wrong, how Selara had been captured by her own kind for daring to negotiate, but words felt inadequate before that gaze, that ancient machine. Still, he spoke. "She wanted peace," he said. "She thought if she could reach us before the war began, maybe, just maybe, we could stop it. But her convoy was destroyed. My team found her in the wreckage, half dead. We didn't even know who she was until she woke." The orb shimmered, flashes of memory reflected in its surface. Fire, debris, his gloved hands pulling her from the twisted hull. "I told her I'd get her home. I promised." The orb's light deepened to gold. Gasps rippled through the audience. The queen's pupils narrowed, molten eyes reflecting both fury and something far more complicated. "You saved her," she said softly, "and yet you brought her to me knowing it could mean your death." Elias nodded once. "It was her choice," he said, "and I keep my promises." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the orb dimmed and dissolved, fading into motes of light that drifted away like dust in sunlight. The queen turned, her cloak trailing molten silver. "So be it," she said. "You have spoken truth. But truth alone does not grant forgiveness. You will remain here until I decide whether your presence is an act of peace or provocation." She gestured, and the guards closed in. Elias stepped forward, but Selara caught his arm. "Please," she whispered, "don't fight them." Her eyes met his, blue like glacial depths, but trembling now. "Trust me." He hesitated only a second before nodding. The guards led him away, through echoing corridors of light and stone. The door sealed behind him with a low hum. The cell was not a dungeon, more like a museum vault, all smooth surfaces and faint illumination. He sank to the floor, head in his hands, replaying the queen's words. Peace or provocation. It always came down to that. To them, humanity was chaos incarnate, unpredictable, emotional, stubborn. Yet Selara had believed in him, in them. He couldn't fail her now. Somewhere beyond those walls, the fate of 2 civilizations balanced on trust forged in a firestorm. He didn't notice the faint shimmer of blue light until it coalesced beside him. A projection, faint but recognizable. Selara's hologram flickered into form, her expression urgent. "They mean to test you," she said. "Mother will demand proof of humanity's worth." Elias looked up. "And what counts as proof?" Her image wavered. "Survive the trial of Concord. No human has ever faced it." He exhaled slowly. "Guess I'll be the first." Her lips curved in a bittersweet smile. "That's what frightens them most," she said softly. "That you might succeed." Then the hologram vanished. Alone again, Elias leaned against the cold wall and closed his eyes. He could almost hear her heartbeat, steady against the storm. Humanity had been underestimated before, by empires, by machines, by the universe itself. Every time they'd endured, he would too. Not for pride, not for politics, but because he had promised a frightened alien princess that he would never let go. And humans, above all else, were creatures of their word. Outside the cell, the alien queen stood before the dying embers of the witness orb. Its last glimmers danced across her crimson skin like reflections of memory. For the first time in years, she felt something she could not name, a spark of doubt. She turned to her advisor, voice measured. "He speaks like the old ones," she murmured, "as though honor still means something." The advisor bowed. "Shall we destroy him, my queen?" The question hung in the air. The queen's golden eyes flickered toward the great windows, where stars burned cold and distant. "No," she said finally. "Not yet." The next dawn painted the palace in ultraviolet hues. From his cell, Elias could see the alien sky through narrow slats of crystalline glass, a world of twin suns and jagged spires rising like frozen lightning. A soft chime echoed. The door dissolved, revealing a procession of guards. "Captain Ward," one announced. "The Queen summons you to the trial." Elias stood, his body aching from sleeplessness but his resolve unbroken. As they escorted him through halls of shimmering stone, he caught glimpses of murals. Humans and aliens locked in eternal wars, endless cycles of fear. Maybe that was what Celara had wanted to end. When he entered the amphitheater, the sheer scale of it stole his breath. Tens of thousands filled the tiered seats, citizens, soldiers, nobles. At the center, an arena of light and shifting platforms stretched into infinity. Above it, the queen stood on her dais, Celara beside her, expression unreadable. "You seek peace," the queen declared, her voice magnified across the air. "Then prove your kind worthy of it. The trial of concord will measure not your strength, but your nature." Elias's gaze swept the arena as metallic forms rose from the floor. Automatons, their limbs gleaming with alien energy. But these were not weapons of war. They were puzzles, shifting mechanisms of balance and cooperation. He realized, with a jolt, that brute force would fail here. The test was not about domination, it was about unity. The queen's voice carried again. "You will not survive alone." Then she gestured, and Celara descended the stairs to stand beside him. The crowd murmured in shock. Elias turned to her. "You're joining me?" he asked. "Mother's command," she said quietly. "If we fail, she will have proof that trust between our species is impossible." Elias nodded. "Then we don't fail." Her hand found his again, and for a moment, the galaxy shrank to the space between their palms. As the trial began, light surged around them, reshaping the ground into a labyrinth of floating platforms and energy bridges that flickered in and out of existence. Alien machines hovered overhead, scanning, judging. Celara leaped first, her movements fluid, elegant. Elias followed, his heavier boots barely keeping balance on the flickering paths. Together, they wove through the shifting maze, relying on instinct, on timing, on unspoken rhythm. Every pulse of energy demanded coordination. Every step tested trust. When a platform gave way beneath Celara's feet, Elias lunged without thinking, catching her wrist. The crowd gasped as they swung over the abyss, blue and gold light swirling beneath them. For an instant, he thought he'd lose his grip, but then her other hand locked around his arm, and together they hauled upward. The platform reformed beneath them, shimmering solid again. They stood panting, eyes meeting through adrenaline and fear. The queen watched from above, expression unreadable. As the final barrier rose, the maze split in two paths, two endpoints pulsing out of sync. "We'll never reach them both," Celara said. Elias looked at her, then at the control nodes glowing faintly. "Then we do what humans do best," he said. "We improvise." She tilted her head. "Meaning?" He grinned despite himself. "We cheat together." He jumped first, hurling his gauntlet across the gap. It struck a stabilizer crystal, creating a bridge for 2 heartbeats, just long enough for Celara to leap through and trigger the second node. Energy flared, merging both paths into one blazing line of light that reached the center. The arena pulsed white. Silence fell. Then, slowly, the crowd began to rise, thousands of alien eyes watching 2 figures standing hand in hand in the glow of unity. The queen rose. Her voice trembled with something dangerously close to awe. Perhaps, she said softly, there is more to your kind than arrogance and fire. Elias met her gaze, breath still ragged. Maybe, he said, or maybe we just hold on tighter than we should. Selara smiled faintly, her fingers tightening around his. High above, the witness orb's remnants shimmered back into being, unseen by all but the queen. Its final light formed two interlocked figures, one red, one blue, one human, and then faded into gold. The queen's expression softened. So begins the proving, she whispered. The roar of the crowd faded into a low, resonant hum as the queen's voice silenced the amphitheater. The light that had once flared in triumph dimmed to a steady, spectral glow, leaving Elias and Selara standing in the center of the arena. He could still feel the vibration of the trial's collapsing platforms beneath his boots, the pulse of energy that had connected their two species in one act of impossible synchronization. Yet above them, the queen's expression remained unreadable, a crimson mask carved from the same fire that forged her crown. The trial is complete, she declared, but peace is not earned through spectacle. Her gaze shifted, molten and sharp. It is proven through endurance. The murmuring voices of the crowd rippled outward, echoing against the amphitheater's high walls like waves of static. Elias swallowed hard. He had half expected the queen to end it there, to declare judgment, to either free him or execute him. Instead, she descended once more from her dais, each measured step ringing with finality. Your trial, she said, is not yet over. Selara's hand tightened slightly around his. Mother, he has done what no human has, she began, but the queen cut her off with a raised hand. And yet I have not decided whether that is a blessing or a curse. Guards in silver armor appeared from the archways, carrying with them two small crystalline objects that pulsed in time with the queen's heartbeat. They looked like fragments of the witness orb, reshaped and alive. These shards, the queen said, carry memory and meaning. One will show the truth of your world, human. The other will show ours. You will each face the other's reflection. Her gaze softened, though it was not kindness, merely inevitability. Only then can I judge if there is any bridge worth building. Elias frowned. What do you mean, face the other's reflection? The queen's lips curved in something that might have been amusement. You will walk through memory not your own, she said. You will see your species through alien eyes. You will see what they see when they look upon humanity. He felt a chill crawl down his spine. Selara's voice, softer now, barely reached him. It's the right of perception. It was banned centuries ago. He turned to her sharply. Banned? She nodded, expression grave. Because most who entered did not return unchanged. The shards rose between them, one glowing gold, the other deep azure. Without waiting for further command, the queen extended her hand. Begin. The shards pulsed once, and the world shattered. Elias felt the air rip away. The ground, the light, even his breath dissolved into a torrent of color and sound that tore through his mind like a storm. He staggered, trying to scream, but there was no voice, no body. Then the colors coalesced, and he found himself standing under a sky that wasn't his. The city stretched before him like a living cathedral, its towers curved and organic, pulsing with light. But it wasn't the architecture that froze him, it was the people. Red-skinned, golden-eyed, moving with grace that seemed choreographed by gravity itself. He looked down and saw his reflection in a pool of mirrored water. Only it wasn't his reflection. It was a monster, his skin pale, eyes hollow, mouth twisted into something hungry. The alien citizens recoiled as he passed, whispering words he could not understand. Fear, disgust, contempt. The sensations hit him like blows. He tried to speak, to tell them he wasn't like that, but the reflection followed him, mocking every movement. It wasn't just a dream. It was perception itself. The queen's truth filtered through generations of trauma. He saw flashes, human fleets descending like storms, orbital bombardments, metal tearing through sky. He heard screams, alien children, fire raining from black clouds. Humanity had been here before in this part of the galaxy long ago, and what they left behind had burned deep into the alien psyche. Then the scene shifted. He was in a war room, alien generals around a table, holograms of human soldiers projected above. "They take without asking," one said, her voice a snarl. "They speak of peace, but build walls of fire." Another added, "They believe themselves saviors, even as they destroy." Elias clenched his fists, heart pounding. "That's not all of us," he whispered. But the words vanished into static. He saw another flash, one that felt real, personal. A human commander ordering a bombing run on an alien refugee convoy. The devastation, the silence after. His chest tightened. The reflection was unbearable. Then suddenly the storm broke. A voice, familiar, soft, cut through the noise. "Not all of them," it said. He turned, and there was Selara, younger, standing amid the wreckage, holding the hand of a dying human child. The vision blurred, then faded completely. The shard cracked, and Elias fell back into his body with a gasp. He was kneeling in the arena, drenched in sweat, trembling. The crowd was silent, watching. Across from him, Selara was just beginning her own vision. Her hand brushed the blue shard, and her world vanished as his had. For her, the sky was gray, metallic, and endless. She stood on a desolate earth, centuries after the last of its oceans had receded. Human survivors scoured the wastes, thin and determined, their eyes bright with something fierce. She saw them building machines from ruins, growing food in poisoned soil, laughing even as storms howled overhead. She felt their pain, the hunger, the fear, but also their fire. They did not yield. Even when the stars abandoned them, they built their own paths to reach them again. Then she saw their wars, not with her people but with each other. Civilizations collapsing and rising anew, always reaching, always rebuilding. And through it all, a thread of defiance, a refusal to die. When the last colony ship lifted from Earth's dead crust, she felt their hearts beating as one, terrified and hopeful. "We go," one voice said, "because if we stop, we are no longer human." The vision tore at her chest. When she opened her eyes, tears streaked down her blue skin. Elias was already watching her, chest heaving. The Queen's gaze darted between them, sharp and searching. "What did you see?" she demanded. Selara looked at her mother, voice trembling. "I saw them suffer," she whispered. "I saw them destroy and rebuild, over and over, until nothing was left but will." Her hand rose to her heart. "And I saw why they never stopped fighting." The Queen's expression darkened. "And you, human?" Elias met her gaze. "I saw why you fear us," he said quietly. "And I don't blame you." He stood, every movement heavy. "But you're wrong about one thing. We don't fight because we crave conquest. We fight because if we don't, everything we love disappears." He looked around the amphitheater, meeting 1,000 alien eyes. "You call us chaos. Maybe we are. But sometimes chaos is what breaks the pattern that keeps everyone bleeding." The silence that followed was vast, broken only by the hum of the shards fading into nothing. The Queen turned away, her cloak whispering across the floor. "You speak well," she said finally. "But words do not erase history." She paused, looking toward her daughter. "And what would you have me do, Selara? Cast aside centuries of blood because you found one human who remembers mercy?" Selara's chin lifted. "Because he is not alone," she said. "Because there are others like him. And because if we do not try now, we may never again have the chance." Her mother's eyes flickered. "You would risk our people for hope?" "Yes," Selara said simply. "Because that's what he taught me." The crowd erupted, some in fury, some in awe. The Queen raised a hand, silencing them once more. She looked between the two of them, her expression torn between fury and something else. Recognition, perhaps. Then she spoke. "If peace is to begin, it will begin with a test of faith." Her eyes locked on Elias. "You will go to the border world of Kareth. There, my armies hold against the remnants of your kind who still wage war. If you can bring them to cease their fire, then perhaps I will believe. Elias's heart clenched. And if I fail? The queen's gaze was merciless. Then your bones will lie beside theirs. That night, the alien palace seemed quieter. The corridors stretched longer, haunted by echoes of things unspoken. Selara found him in the chamber assigned to him, a crystalline balcony overlooking the twin moons. She stood in the doorway, her armor gone, her expression unreadable. You shouldn't have agreed so quickly, she said. I didn't have much of a choice, he replied, staring at the horizon. She's giving me a chance to end the war. I'll take it. She moved beside him, the faint glow of her skin casting soft blue light across his face. You could die there. He nodded. Probably. Her eyes searched his, uncertain. Why do you keep risking yourself for people who barely see you as more than an intruder? Elias exhaled, the answer slow but certain. Because if we don't risk anything, we never change. She looked away, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. My mother doesn't trust easily, she said. But something in you unsettles her. That might be the only reason she hasn't already had you executed. He smiled faintly. Guess that's progress. She gave him a look somewhere between irritation and fondness. Humans and their jokes. He shrugged. It's how we keep from falling apart. The silence between them stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. Beyond the balcony, the first ships were preparing for departure. Sleek alien vessels that shimmered with energy, unlike anything human-made. Selara turned toward him. I'll go with you, she said. Elias blinked. You can't. Your mother will object, she interrupted. She always does. But this isn't just your trial anymore. It's ours. He opened his mouth to protest, but the look in her eyes silenced him. Determination, fierce and clear. He'd seen it before in soldiers, in scientists, in people who refused to yield to the impossible. He nodded. Then we go together. When dawn broke, the palace's golden spires caught fire with light, and the queen stood upon her balcony, watching the human and her daughter board the waiting vessel. She said nothing, but her fingers brushed the edge of her crown, feeling the faint tremor of unease in her chest. Perhaps the human was right. Perhaps chaos was necessary. As the ship lifted into the violet sky, Elias stared out at the alien world receding below. He felt Selara's presence beside him, steady and silent. You ever think, he murmured, that maybe peace isn't something you win, but something you survive long enough to understand? She smiled faintly. Then let's make sure we survive. The stars stretched ahead, endless and waiting. The ship sliced through the blue-violet stratosphere of Threxus, its hull humming with alien harmonics that vibrated faintly in Elias's bones. From the forward viewport, the twin suns blazed like molten coins, their light scattering across the sleek metal of the alien cruiser. Selara sat beside him, her posture rigid, her eyes distant. Below them, the planet curved away in a haze of golden clouds, shrinking into memory. Ahead waited Kareth, the border world, the scar between civilizations. Elias stared at the navigational readouts. The characters looked nothing like human script, yet he'd learned enough to track their position. Kareth was half a day away. He glanced toward Selara. What's it like down there? She didn't answer immediately, gaze fixed on the stars. Broken, she said finally. A wasteland of glass and ash. It used to be a neutral trade hub before the wars burned it hollow. Her voice tightened. My mother's armies hold the northern hemisphere. Your kind still hides in the ruins below the equator. He nodded, his reflection faint in the viewport. Then that's where we start. She looked at him sharply. You think they'll talk to you? He smiled without humor. I've been called worse things than ambassador. For a moment, the corner of her lips twitched. I believe that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy with what neither of them dared say. The closer they drew to Kareth, the darker the stars seemed. Debris fields littered orbit, fragments of ships frozen in eternal drift. Elias felt his stomach twist as he recognized one, the twisted remains of a human corvette. Saylara saw it too. They never cleared the graveyard, she murmured, to remind both sides what happens when trust fails. The ship's systems pulsed as they passed through the wreckage, faint electromagnetic whispers brushing their hull like ghosts. When they descended through the atmosphere, the view was worse than any report. Vast plains of scorched glass stretched to the horizon, interrupted only by skeletal towers leaning like broken fingers. Lightning forked through sulfur clouds, painting everything in shades of amber and gray. The cruiser's landing struts sank into cracked earth with a hiss. Saylara checked the environmental readings. Breathable, she said. Barely. Outside, the wind screamed like a living thing. Elias stepped down the ramp, the heat prickling through his suit. The air tasted metallic like blood and ozone. He scanned the horizon through his visor's filters until he spotted movement. Shapes darting between ruined spires, too organized to be scavengers. Human. He lifted his hands, signaling peace. We come unarmed, he shouted, his voice echoing off the ruins. A figure emerged from the haze, armored in mismatched plating and dust. When the visor lifted, Elias felt a jolt of recognition. Captain Vega? He breathed. The woman's face was older, scarred, but unmistakable. She had commanded the 7th Expeditionary Fleet, the same one declared lost 6 years ago. Ward? She said slowly, disbelief etched in every syllable. Thought you were dead. He smiled faintly. You and everyone else. Her gaze shifted to Saylara, and her expression hardened instantly. You brought one of them? Elias nodded. She's with me. That's supposed to mean something? Vega snapped. The humans behind her raised rifles. You have no idea what they did here. Elias took a slow breath. Then tell me. The ruins swallowed sound as Vega led them deeper into what had once been a city. Tents and makeshift shelters lined the streets, human survivors moving like ghosts. Children peeked out from behind walls, their eyes too large, too wary. This was Meridian Station, Vega said. 500,000 people before the Threxian bombardment. Now we're barely 2,000. Her tone was flat. They call it peacekeeping. Saylara flinched. It wasn't sanctioned by the Crown, she said quietly. Vega laughed, a short, broken sound. They always say that. Elias stepped between them. That's why we're here. To stop this cycle before it eats everything. Vega's eyes burned. You think a speech fixes glassed cities? No, he said. But maybe it stops the next one. That night, the survivors held a council in what was left of the old hall. The walls were cracked, stars visible through the roof. Elias stood before them, Saylara at his side. We've seen what both sides fear, he said. I've walked through your pain. She's walked through ours. We can't change what's done, but we can decide what comes next. A man shouted from the back. And what makes you think they want peace? Saylara's voice rose clear and steady. Because I do, she said. And I'm her daughter. The room went silent. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Vega stared, disbelief turning slowly to something else. Curiosity, maybe. If that's true, she said, then you've just made yourself the biggest target on this planet. Saylara met her gaze. Then let the first shot fall on me. Elias felt pride swell and fear twist in equal measure. The human and alien faces around them watched, torn between rage and exhaustion. But exhaustion won. No one wanted to bury more children. By dawn, a fragile truce had formed. Not official, not signed, but real enough to breathe. The following days blurred into work. Elias coordinated patrols, reconnected power grids, and brokered cautious meetings between human engineers and alien envoys sent down from orbit. Saylara moved among both groups, her presence both calming and defiant. The first time she touched a dying child's forehead in the human infirmary, even Vega couldn't look away. You really think she means it? Vega asked later. I think she's tired of watching everyone burn, Elias replied. But not all shared their hope. On the 5th day, as the sun bled over the horizon, a transmission crackled through the base. It was from the Queen. You have gone beyond your mandate, human, her voice thundered. Withdraw or the fleet descends. Elias froze. She's bluffing, Vega said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed doubt. Selara turned pale. She isn't. She's afraid peace will weaken her control. Moments later, orbital scans confirmed it. Multiple Threxian warships moving into position above Kareth. Panic rippled through the camp. Elias slammed his hand against the comm console. This isn't how it ends, he muttered. Then he looked to Selara. We need to show her. She frowned. Show her what? That there's more strength in mercy than in fear. They worked through the night, linking the old human transmitters to the alien comm arrays Selara had brought. When the systems aligned, Elias opened the channel. Queen Threxis, he said, his voice steady. Look at what your people are about to destroy again. The live feed showed the camp. Humans and aliens working side by side, rebuilding solar towers, distributing food. Children laughing for the first time in years. You said we must prove humanity's worth. This is it. For a long, breathless moment, there was only static. Then the Queen's voice, softer, almost weary. And what of betrayal, human? What if your peace is merely the pause before conquest? Elias's answer came without hesitation. Then it'll be our burden to prove you wrong every day after this. The fleet held position. Selara's hand found his, trembling. She's listening, she whispered. The feed cut out. Silence. Then the clouds above split, not with fire, but with light. The fleet turned away. For the first time in centuries, Kareth saw a sunrise without ash. Vega stared at the sky, disbelief and wonder mingling in her eyes. You did it, she said. Elias shook his head. We did it. Selara smiled, exhaustion and relief softening her features. My mother will still demand answers, she said quietly. But maybe now she'll listen. He looked at her, hand still clasping hers. Then let's make her listen together. As the sun climbed higher, the shattered glass planes reflected two silhouettes standing side by side. One human, one alien. Watching the dawn of something fragile and new. The universe had not changed overnight, but it had begun. The ship that carried Elias and Selara back to Threxis flew in silence. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted past like distant witnesses, cold and unmoved. Inside, the tension was thick enough to feel on the tongue. They had done the impossible on Kareth, ended centuries of hatred, even if just for a moment. Yet the Queen's summons had come swift and cold. Return at once. No gratitude, no warning, just judgment waiting behind palace walls of molten gold. Elias watched Selara as she stood by the viewport, her reflection pale blue against the starlight. She hadn't spoken since the transmission. She's afraid, he said finally. Of you. Of this. Selara's eyes flicked to him, bright and distant. My mother doesn't fear, she said. She calculates. Then softer. But you're right. Something in her calculations has changed. He nodded. Then let's make sure it changes the right way. When the ship entered Threxis's atmosphere, the clouds burned violet and crimson, as if the planet itself resented their return. The palace loomed ahead, its towers of crystal and fire now crowned with war banners. The moment they disembarked, they were surrounded by guards. Spears of charged light crossed before Elias's chest. By order of the crown, one barked, the human is to be detained. Selara stepped forward. He comes by my command. The guard hesitated, but only for a breath. Then you will both answer before the Queen. The throne hall was darker than before. The Queen stood not upon her dais but before the great window that overlooked the city's burning skyline. The air shimmered with heat. You defied me, she said without turning. You broadcasted to my fleet without sanction. You allied with insurgents. Her voice was quiet, but the weight of it pressed like gravity. Elias didn't flinch. We ended the fighting, he said. We gave them something to live for. The Queen turned, her eyes twin suns. You gave them doubt, she hissed. You showed my people that weakness wears a human face. Selara stepped between them. He showed them hope, she said. And you know it. The queen's gaze flicked to her daughter, the tension a live wire. You forget your place. No, Selara said softly. For the first time, I remember it. The silence cracked like glass. For a heartbeat, Elias thought the queen would strike her down. Instead, she exhaled, the fury bleeding into exhaustion. You would stake our empire on faith in a species that devours its own? She said. Elias met her gaze evenly. We learn from our devouring, he said. That's how we survive. The words hung in the charged air like sparks. Then, from somewhere deep in the palace, an alarm wailed. A low, throbbing pulse. The guards froze. A messenger burst into the hall, panting, eyes wide. My queen, the southern sky burns. The Ascendancy fleet has breached orbit. The queen's composure cracked. Impossible. They claim to fight in your name, the messenger stammered. But they fire on both Threxian and human signals. Selara's face went pale. The warlords, she whispered. They're trying to seize the crown. Elias's mind raced. The Ascendancy, fanatics loyal not to the queen but to conquest itself, had been waiting for a chance to strike. They'll glass the capital, he said. You need to evacuate your people. The queen turned sharply. And leave my world to traitors? He met her fury with calm steel. Or stand and burn with it. The queen hesitated, for the first time truly uncertain. Then she looked at Selara. What would you do? The princess lifted her chin. Fight for the living, not the throne. The decision came in a whisper. So be it, the queen said. But if this fails, our blood will end together. She turned to Elias. You wanted peace, human? Then earn it one last time. The city was chaos. Ships streaked through the sky, leaving trails of fire. Plasma fire lit the horizon in pulses, each one shaking the ground like thunder. Elias and Selara ran through the command corridors, linking human frequencies to Threxian defenses. You can't just shoot them down, Elias said, fingers flying across the console. Half those ships don't even know they're following traitors. Then what do you suggest? Selara snapped, breathless. We show them the truth. Elias patched into the comms and broadcast across all open channels. His voice filled the air of a dying world. This is Captain Elias Ward of Earth. I speak not as your enemy but as proof that peace is possible. You fight for ghosts. The war is over if you want it to be. For a moment only static answered. Then silence in the skies. One by one, enemy ships faltered, their weapons dimming. But some did not. One flagship broke formation, diving straight toward the capital. They're going to ram the palace, someone shouted. Elias grabbed Selara's arm. The central core? Can we trigger the shield manually? From inside, she said, eyes wide. But it will kill whoever stays. He didn't hesitate. Then you go. I'll handle it. She caught his wrist, desperate. No, he met her gaze. You once asked why humans hold on so tight. It's because we can't stand to watch the people we care about die when we can do something about it. Her lips trembled. If you do this, He cut her off gently. Then make sure it means something. He ran through the collapsing halls, smoke and flame chasing his steps. The core chamber glowed like a dying star. Every alarm screamed. He slammed his hands against the controls, bypassing security, forcing the ancient system awake. Outside, the flagship was a burning spear seconds away. The queen's voice echoed faintly through the comms. Human, what are you doing? Buying you time, he said. That's what we do best. He slammed the activation sequence. A column of light erupted from the palace, expanding into a shimmering barrier just as the flagship struck. The impact lit the sky, white fire blooming across the horizon. The shockwave shattered towers, turned sand to glass. Then silence. When Selara opened her eyes, she was lying amid rubble, the air thick with dust and ozone. The city was in ruins, but the sky, still whole. Above, fragments of the enemy fleet burned harmlessly in the atmosphere. She stumbled to her feet, searching. Elias, she shouted. No answer. only the soft hum of the surviving shield. She found him by the core, half buried in debris, his uniform scorched. His chest still rose, faintly. Relief broke through her like sunlight. She knelt, taking his hand, the same hand she had once held before the throne. "You did it," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, a tired smile ghosting across his lips. "Told you humans hold on." The queen arrived moments later, her crimson armor cracked, her crown gone. She looked at the devastation, then at the human lying broken but alive. For the first time, she knelt. "You saved my world," she said quietly. Elias shook his head weakly. "Your daughter did." The queen's gaze softened, molten eyes dimmed by something like sorrow. "Then perhaps I owe humanity a debt I cannot repay." He smiled faintly. "Just don't waste it." His eyes closed, not in death but in exhaustion. Selara held his hand until his breathing steadied. The queen stood, looking toward the horizon. "Perhaps the age of fire is ending," she murmured. Selara looked up at her. "If it is," she said, "then it began with a human." The dawn that followed was unlike any before. The shield dissolved, revealing a sky clear for the first time in centuries. The people of Threxus emerged from their shelters to see humans and aliens standing side by side amid the ruins. Word spread faster than light, of a man who saved the queen's world, and of a princess who believed in him. Far above, the shattered remnants of the Ascendancy fleet drifted silently through orbit. Their war songs ended. And within the palace, the queen stood beside the bed of the recovering human. "When you wake," she whispered, "perhaps we will start again, not as enemies but as equals." Her hand lingered for a moment, then withdrew. When Elias awoke, the light was soft, filtered through translucent panels that pulsed faintly with life. Every breath burned, but it was real. He wasn't dead, not yet. Beyond the transparent walls, the city rebuilt itself piece by piece. Workers on grav cranes lowering beams, children running through streets that no longer smoked. He turned his head and saw Selara asleep in a chair, her hand still wrapped around his. She stirred as he moved, eyes brightening instantly. "You're awake," she whispered. He managed a faint smile. "For now." She leaned forward, her voice trembling between relief and exhaustion. "The fleets stand down. The warlords are gone. My mother has called a convocation of the great houses." He frowned. "To do what?" "To decide if peace survives without you." He tried to sit, failed, then laughed weakly. "Then I guess we'd better give them a reason." She pressed his shoulder. "You've given them one already. They call you the barrier bearer." His expression turned dry. "I'd settle for the guy who almost blew himself up." She smiled through tears. Humans always make legends sound smaller than they are. Days blurred into slow recovery. The queen visited rarely, always silent. When she finally spoke, it was not as a ruler but as a woman weary of endless war. "I have summoned envoys from Earth," she said. "Your world will speak for itself." Elias nodded. "That's all we ever wanted." She studied him, the faintest softness in her gaze. "You risked everything for a people that barely knew your name. That's humanity's curse," he said. "We care even when it hurts." The convocation gathered beneath the vaulted dome of stars, an ancient chamber whose ceiling opened to the heavens. Representatives of every Threxian house stood in a circle of flamelight, armor gleaming like molten glass. At the center, Elias walked slowly, supported by Selara. Whispers rippled through the assembly. The human who defied the queen, who shielded her world, who held the princess's hand as equals. The queen rose. "You all know his crime," she said. "He disobeyed me, endangered my throne. And yet, without him, this world would be ash." She turned to Elias. "Speak, human. Show them why I should not end this here." The chamber fell silent. Elias drew breath, every word a battle. "You see humanity as dangerous. You're right. We are. We're reckless, emotional, loud. But we're also the species that built bridges out of wreckage, that loves what it doesn't understand, that refuses to let go when everything says it should. He looked around, meeting alien eyes unflinching. You think peace is weakness. We think it's survival. Maybe that's the same thing seen from different sides. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Selara stepped forward, voice ringing like crystal. My mother taught me that strength is obedience, she said. He taught me it's choice. She reached for Elias's hand, slowly, deliberately, before the entire assembly. Gasps swept the room. If the future frightens you, she said, then help us shape it instead of fearing it. The queen closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was no fire, only resolve. Then so it shall be, she said. From this day, the Treaty of Kareth binds our worlds. Not by conquest, but by courage. She raised her hand, and the hall erupted in cascading light as ancient sigils flared to life. Symbols of unity unseen for generations. Outside, the twin suns aligned for the first time in centuries, their light crossing over the city like a promise. Bells, real and electronic, rang through every district. Ships in orbit powered down their weapons, their lights forming constellations of peace across the sky. Later, when the crowds dispersed and the queen returned to her silent chambers, Selara found Elias standing on the palace terrace. His uniform was repaired, though his body still ached. He stared at the horizon where dawn met alien mountains. You're leaving, she said quietly. He nodded. Earth will want its own voice here. I'm just the messenger. She stepped closer, the wind carrying the scent of metal and flowers. Then let this world remember the messenger. He smiled. As long as it remembers why we tried. She hesitated, then said, My mother will offer you a seat among the ambassadors. You could stay. He looked at her, eyes tired but bright. And live as the human who held a princess's hand? Her lips curved. As the human who taught a queen to hope. He laughed softly, then reached out, fingers brushing hers. You ever notice, he said, that every story about peace starts with someone asking the wrong question? She tilted her head. Which question? Why? He squeezed her hand gently. The real one's how. They stood there as the stars brightened overhead. No longer enemies, not quite lovers, but something rarer. Witnesses to the moment when history bent. Below them, the city pulsed with new life, power grids humming, laughter rising from streets reborn. 1,000 stories beginning at once. When the Earth Envoy ship arrived, Elias turned one last time toward the palace. The queen awaited him on the landing platform, her crimson cloak trailing behind. Human, she said, voice formal but warm, you have changed more than my world. You have changed its meaning. He bowed slightly. Then I'll consider that mission accomplished. She inclined her head. If your species ever forgets what you did here, remember this, hope does not belong to any one world. He smiled. Neither does fear. But maybe we've both learned how to live with it. He stepped aboard, the ramp closing behind him with a hiss. As the ship lifted, Selara stood beside her mother, watching the engines fade into the violet sky. Do you think we'll see him again? She asked. The queen's gaze stayed on the stars. If the universe is just, she said, we will not need to. His kind leaves echoes, not monuments. Far from Threxus, aboard the outbound vessel, Elias sat by the viewport, watching the twin suns shrink to embers. In the reflection, he saw not a soldier, not a savior, but a man who had simply refused to let go. Around him, the stars stretched like endless possibilities. He whispered to no one, let's see what comes next.